Yeah, I think a lot of us were. I mean, obviously, Reggie continued to predict things on YouTube that were going to happen, and state that if Keefe didn't get arrested or indicted, that he would step away and stuff like that. So we had that, but I want to ask this because this is a question that comes up a lot, and obviously this happened before you had the task force and you were investigating, but you had access to the files. So I'm wondering if you could shed some light on this for people that don't know and that might be naive. They would say, well, if Suge and all them knew that it was Keefe D and Orlando and Big Dre and Terrence Brown, um, why is it, in your opinion, and maybe you know more than just an opinion on this, but why did nothing happen to them? Obviously, all of them but Keefe D are dead, and they all most of them died from pretty violent things, but none of those violence was attached to any sort of retaliatory thing for Tupac. Why do you think that is?
Well, keep in mind, some people were getting shot in the conflict that erupted the day after Tupac was shot. So there was a little war going on, and you've got to keep in mind how this all works within the mores of the gang world. You know, Keefe, and this is what he said, and this is what they would do, if you know anything about how gangs operate. They're expecting retaliation. So they get their guns, they hunker down, they're really careful about not slipping, they stay in the neighborhood, they're looking out for retaliation. And so they're doing what they need to do to avoid getting shot. Now, if you're one of the enemies and you want to get at these guys, you've got to risk your life because you got to go into their neighborhood, and they're going to see you before you see them, most likely. And so if I want to go and find Keefe D, I've got to go to a street where I think he's hanging out. And by me going down the street, it's more likely I'm going to get shot before I ever find Keefe D. Because guys on the street are going to be like, yo, man, that's that motherfucking blood. That's slob. So, it's not as easy as you think. You don't just go knocking on somebody's door. Is Keefe D home? Yeah, let me go get him for you. Okay, cool, because I'm going to kill him. It's just, people just think these things are much more simpler than they are. And so, you just got to be practical about it. These guys knew there was going to be retaliation. They were sure that, they kind of tried to avoid slipping. Some people did get caught in some crossfire, but hopefully that answers the question. It's just not like you can go over and, hey, I think I'll kill Keefe D in Orlando today. Let me go find him.
Okay. Orlando was brought in and questioned in regards to this murder. Was his? Well, I'm assuming his interview was in the case files that you had access to. Off of, just the top of your head, off of memory, can you shed any light on that interview, or was it just a lot of, I don't know, I wasn't there, I don't know?
With Orlando Anderson?
Yes, correct.
Oh, it was very clear that he wasn't going to cooperate. And Vegas decided, if the guy's not going to cooperate, he's going to lawyer up. You're kind of at a dead end at that point. Orlando Anderson didn't provide any information. It wasn't much of an interview to begin with. And so Las Vegas went home and empty-handed as far as Orlando was concerned. But the search warrants that were all based on Tim Brennan's work did reveal quite a bit. There was some good evidence in there. They were finding postcards from Terrence Anderson's backpack that was from Las Vegas. And things that were indicative of him being in Las Vegas, even though when they interviewed him, he said he wasn't in Vegas. And so there was information that that was valuable to a certain degree, but insofar as Orlando Anderson's providing any information, that wasn't happening.
Okay. And then Orlando kind of starts to, like, as you mentioned, he does lawyer up, and then he actually starts to do a few interviews himself, talking about how, and he's kind of smirking throughout the interviews, but he's saying how, he feels bad for Tupac. It was, he had nothing to do with it, that he was the victim in all this. Obviously, this is after the footage of him at the MGM comes out of the fight, so he can't deny that he wasn't there. But what is your take on why he went public and started doing, and it wasn't a lot. I want to say maybe he did like 2 interviews or something back in 97, 98. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, remember that Afeni Shakur had filed a lawsuit against him, and then he countersued a lawsuit against her, and so, there's this whole conflict going on between Orlando Anderson and Afeni, and so he's getting interviewed by people and probably thinks that somehow is going to help support, whatever counterclaim he's making against Afeni. And so the whole thing is such a dirty fucking mess. And then you got Orlando Anderson going and testifying on Suge's behalf. So Suge pays Orlando some money. Orlando wants to open up his own little, recording gig. So he needs to come up with some cash. And so Suge solicits him, hey man, come testify favorably at my probation hearing. Tell everybody that I wasn't trying to stomp you. I'm desperately trying to, keep from going to jail. So Orlando's like, all right, give me some money. I'll go do that for you. Now imagine this. You're in a car with Tupac, your buddy, supposedly, your money-making artist. He gets shot and killed by a guy, and you're looking at going to prison because of what you did to that guy. And you're like, oh man, my only solution is to now hire and be friend to that guy. So the whole story is just, you just can't make it up. And so of course the judge says, man, your testimony is shit. I can read right through your lies, because he looked on the stand the same way he did when he was interviewed and questioned about his involvement in Tupac's murder. He's just not believable. And then of course, Suge gets convicted regardless of Orlando Anderson's testimony, and Anderson goes and gets himself shot and killed not too long after.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the twists and turns of this case are fascinating.